this time. So Lord Jesus, show me where you want me to go. Teach me what you want me to learn. Let me meet with whom you want me to meet. Tell me what you want me to say, and keep me out of your way. So those last two are definitely my prayers of tell me what you want me to say. Kate, I appreciate this morning. You know, it's great to come prepared and written and all of that, but we always kind of want to hold that loosely with what the Holy Spirit's going to do in this time. So the Enneagram, so I think yesterday I said you didn't need it till 4:30. How many of you have not had a chance to actually do this?
I'm almost done.
Okay, so no judgment there. Hey, you give me a deadline and I wrap my mind around and organize things accordingly. So, but I think it'll still be fine. We're going to go ahead and talk about it, and because I'm just going to lay a framework for what it is and how it could possibly be used in our own discipleship journey. And let me get to the right screen. Yeah, so how many of you have ever heard of the Enneagram? Okay, a few of you. So I served on a board the last 5.5 years, and I'm a professional counselor. I was more familiar with the Myers-Briggs type indicator. Anybody ever hear of the Myers-Briggs? Yeah, so much more Enneagram awares than the Myers-Briggs. So the Myers-Briggs is a type indicator that was done a long time ago when I was in college back in the 80s. Myers-Briggs, please understand me, was super, super big. And that's where we kind of have some words like introvert and extrovert, and thinking and feeling and judging and perceiving, and that's often used as well today. There's several different type indicators. There's just this quest to understand ourselves and to just reflect, Lord, how have you made me? We are fearfully and wonderfully made, and I love using these tools to just try to get a little bit of insight on how the Lord has made us. Not to put us in a box as you look at, and so as you get a number and you're saying, I'm A, you are not all A, 9 or A 1 or A 2. This might be the most prevalent expression, but you will see that we can be a compilation. And again, this is just a tool, and so we don't want it to be a stumbling block. But I'm going to show you a little bit of a video, which then I have to, I think...
what your number is.
No, I already fixed it.
Oh, you did. Okay. So this is just a little bit of a humorous video. Stop on that and take it back. This is a YouTube channel. She loves the Enneagram, and she's going to kind of represent all parts. Let me see what the volume is. Turn it up just a bit. Okay, I don't have sound.
So I'm coming. Where's Rebecca?
Right there.
Oh, right. Yeah. Oh. Try one more time.
Cooper, how do you know all this stuff?
I worked in IT for like 12 years.
That's a good answer.
My own way.
Yeah.
Sometimes browsers use
I understand like
so let's see if this is spinning, but let's see if it loads. All right, so a little bit. Oh no, where'd our sound go?
And I want everybody to be happy, and it's exhausting. I've had to be for the last 4 hours, and I do what I want. I've always been different. It's a blessing and a curse. Oh, we just met, so let's not get too personal too fast, okay? Hi, I'm type 6, and even if everything is fine, I know that everything is totally not fine. And I don't like negativity of any kind, so turn those frowns upside down. You don't like me, but you damn well better respect me. I don't do conflict, but I do the calls. Hi. I'm 1, and I am a professional organizer. I'm always right, and even when I'm not right, I have my entire life planned out, and sometimes I have a panic attack if things do not go as planned. Sometimes I feel anger inside of me, and it's not nice.
Type was?
Hi, I'm a 2, and I want everybody to be happy, and it's exhausting. What can I do to help? Anyone? I just want you guys to like me. You know what? Enough about me. What's everyone's favorite dessert? I will be bringing in donuts next week. So.
All I type
I'm
is?
type 3 and I don't have time for this. I just knocked everything off my to-do list. I've had to pee for the last 4 hours and I do what I want. Any questions? Anything else? Let me get back to work.
Type 3s?
Hi, I'm 4 and I'm a feeler. I'm less a body than I am a soul. I like to look at the world through different eyes. I've always been different. It's a blessing and a curse. I like dreary, rainy days and listening to some music.
Of course.
A little bit we just met, so let's not get too personal too fast, okay? I like knowing things and being valued for the insight and knowledge that I bring to the table. Let me look at it, actually. Oh, yeah, I'm a 5. I am type 6, and even if everything is fine, I know that everything is totally not fine. So if we change the plans, please don't expect me to be okay with it. Butterfly effect makes me cry to this day. And oh, I have a suggestion. After this meeting, would you all like to come to my office and see the 27 contingency binders that I put together over the last year? It's just a suggestion, but we should definitely do it.
Sixes?
I'm type 7. I love having new friends, so that's just my subtle hint at asking you guys to be my friend. I love trying new things, and I don't like being micromanaged, and I don't like negativity of any kind. So turn those frowns upside down.
Sevens?
Like that one. Yes. Good. Good job. I'm 8, and you don't know me. You don't have to like me, but you damn well better respect me. How does it feel to be wrong? I've always wondered. Fun fact about me, I reported my old boss to HR within an hour after I was hired. I will protect each of you fiercely. But if you lie to me, you're dead to me. You're out of the circle forever. I think we'll create my own business with cats as the employees because they'll be a lot more fun and more effective than this team. Just speaking the truth. Hello, I'm 9. Nice to meet you guys. I don't do conflict, but I do cuddles. Consensually, obviously. I just want to live and let live. I'm an organized procrastinator. I pretty go with the flow. I'm really not. So that's all. That's all I know about myself. Can we go to the next one?
9s?
When was next?
Peacemaker, number 9.
Should I choose to lay on the floor? You know, I'm supposed to be clean. I should read my Bible, because I'm just going to lay on the floor instead.
All right, so I'm going to say that we'll just bring it in just a little bit here. So lots of humor, and the Enneagram can be really helpful, and it is not to be weaponized. And so when we are vulnerable and we share a bit of who we are, we're being really, really vulnerable. When we take these inventories, we are inviting the Lord to expose some of our areas of fear, some of our insecurity, some of our pain, so we can gently bring those to the surface and turn to the Lord and help him, invite him to bring some healing and some strengthening in those areas. What I love about the Enneagram is it's a tool that kind of just helps us understand ourselves deeper, but it also just celebrates our strengths. And so we really always want to keep it in balance, because there is no like perfect number. And so as you went through them, some certain ones might have stood out for you and you're like, oh, I would like to be that one. But every type has some areas of assets and some strengths and resources that we want to lean into. And then every type also has some areas that we are managing that have been some areas of pain or struggle or fear or just some hard things. And so it helps us just kind of become more aware of how we have kind of adapted some behaviors, some engagement styles, some priorities, some values that help us move forward and interact with people and feel safe in this world. So I want to kind of go over this diagram. It is not a pentagram, so it can look like evil, but it is 9. So this was introduced to me about 5 years ago as I was serving on a board, and everybody was like talking about, so what are you? Are you a 9? Are you an 8? Or when I'm like, I don't know. And so I did a little bit of studying on it. There's several books out there, and there's going to be like some variations of how it's described. So I passed out just a little bit of description from the site that I sent you the free Enneagram assessment on, and so it's going to have some consistent language there. A book that I have read that I really like, it's written by a pastor and a professional counselor, is called The Road Back to You. And I'm gonna be reflecting on some of that, some of the excerpts from some of that, and then so that's been a super helpful book and just gleaning some insights. And so I'm going to kind of go over it and then kind of explain what can we do with this and how can this be a tool for ourselves and then also a tool for others understanding us as well. And I would say I'm on a journey. So as I do these, I have scored a 7, I have scored a 9, I've scored a 2, I've scored a 1. And I'm like, who am I? And so each time though, and a part of it will depend on the different inventory and the way they ask the questions and then the way I'm understanding and interpreting the questions and that. I most commonly will score a 7. What I like, so you can write down maybe this reference as well. One inventory, so what I sent you is just a free one that's going to give you some general ideas, but it's not going to go very deep or reflective. The WEPS, which is the Wagner Enneagram Personality Style Scale, WEPSS.com, takes you to a site that, again, for $12, you can get a little bit more comprehensive. And what that will do is it'll tell you which of the 9 actually rise to the surface, which wing you tend to lean into, and I'm going to explain what these mean. Then it's also going to tell you if you tend to live more resourced into that or less resourced, and I'll explain what that means. And then there's going to be a chart that has all 9 of them and the percentile that you tend to reflect in each. And so you'll see a highest percentile or maybe several that are kind of neck and neck. And as you read about the different ones, you know yourself, and so which one actually sounds more to you, or in which circumstances this is much more like me in these circumstances, but in other circumstances this is like me. So hopefully this is just going to be a bit of a brief overview, but it'll start to make a little bit of sense for you to dig deeper into it and use it as a tool if you so choose. So let me go over just the circle here. So the word Enneagram, Ennea is 9 and gram is map. Where can you best see here? So to get out of the way. So there are 9 different types, and they are separated into primarily 3 different triads or categories. And so the road back to you, we'll start with an 8, 9, and 1 right here. And we'll talk about that each of the 3 triads have this kind of center of intelligence or where they receive information or respond out of. So the gut gets a little bit confusing to me in that, but they will say that the 8, 9, and 1 tend to have feel out of their gut. And so tend to receive and then react more out of gut, which can have sometimes some basis, some underlying anger or defensiveness with it. And oftentimes it has much more of some influence. It's been influenced by how we've related to others or how others have related to us. And so, for example, the 8, 9, and 1 relating out of the gut, each of the 3 will have kind of these different common reactions of either externalizing or kind of numbing and silencing or internalizing. So the 8 is considered this maverick, this challenger, this leader.
Are my 8s again? Okay.
Yeah. And so again, I'm going to describe this in some very, very, very general terms. And again, don't put yourself in a box, because this 8 can look really different depending on who is reflecting this 8. But it gives you a little bit of reflection. We have a daughter who is an 8, and I often tell her that she has little dog syndrome. So she is the youngest of 3, and she's about 5'2", 5'3", so she's short, and she has 2 older brothers. So in the road back to you, they will pair these with the 7 deadly sins, and then they'll add 2. But they'll also take this underlying word that is something that they just don't want to feel, or they don't want to experience. So for an 8, they don't want to feel weak, or they don't want to be controlled. And so oftentimes they will posture up and take a much more assertive, which would be on the kind of leaning toward the resource side, or aggressive, which might be on the less resource side, because they don't want somebody to come in and overtake them. And so, yes?
Sorry, what do you mean by resource side?
Yeah, so in the number, as we become more aware of these different numbers, and we may already be leaning into it, each of the numbers have some strengths and assets about the number, and that would be a more resource side. And then each of these numbers have some adaptive strategies that are really less healthy. So in an 8, for example, it's that difference of assertiveness and aggressiveness. An assertive person will hold this balance of truth and grace. They will be able to address something that maybe they don't like, or challenge something that they've heard and be willing to stand up to that. But they'll do it with a sense of strength, but diplomacy as well. And so they can be what we would call more assertive than aggressive, of like, that was a really stupid thing you just said, and I don't like that at all. And so there's more of a sense of managing the discomfort that they're feeling from what they're hearing, and being able to go in a more diplomatic way, but the boldness to go, which would be different than some. Yeah. So with the maverick and the challenger, this desire to not be controlled, and so to sometimes posture up. The road back to you will describe that they will often have this sense, if not managed well, to fire, aim, and ready, and rather than to pause and just ready, aim, fire. So again, with our daughter, in hers, being little, being the youngest of 2 older brothers, who often kind of dominated her, she, anything resonating with 8s here, she has this strike first posture. And so she asserts herself and stands with confidence. And that way, she is perceived as a bit of a force to be reckoned with, and strong and confident and capable. But she doesn't really want to be isolated and alone. She wants people to engage with her and kind of go toe to toe. She just doesn't want anybody to dominate her. And so learning how to balance that, and also to share power, and to not always have to be in this position of power to feel safe. But then also having enough sense of personal agency and empowerment that when you are with somebody who's strong, you're able to stay in there and be assertive with them and not feel dominated by them. So your 9, also out of the gut, they are often called the peacemaker or the mediator. They, again, highly value relationships and tend to mediate, and oftentimes can be, they don't like conflict. And so in conflict being really distressing for 9s at times, they can somewhat be asleep to the conflict, because they just kind of suppress it because they want to keep things peaceful and harmonious. So sometimes they can say yes to things that they really don't want to say yes to, but they don't want to rock the boat. And so that, would be one of those less resource sides of not being willing to step in or say what you really want, or set a boundary for what you really want, because you just are wanting to avoid conflict.
So
And
where are the 9s? Does this make sense to you? Does it
yeah.
rhyme true? How about the 8s? Did it rhyme true with you too, about you guys that are 8s?
Little bit? Yeah, yeah. And so with 9s, learning to be more assertive, learning to find their voice, learning to be able to stand up for injustices, but having to tolerate the sense of conflict and the distress that conflict can bring of somebody maybe not liking them, and even having to tolerate a bit of separation because that's oftentimes an underlying fear. So then your 1s can have this.
We're the ones.
Yeah, yeah. So they can tend to be the perfectionist, the reformer, the moralist, the critic, and they can be really organized, and they tend to somewhat internalize some of this gut or even internalize an anger where they turn it on more towards themselves. And where they live kind of in a mindset of this picture of perfection that they need to strive towards and that others need to strive towards as well. They are beautiful, they are very detailed, and this is where I'm like, maybe I am a 1, because part of being a 1 is the liking order, the liking rules, having these pictures in your mind of what is right and true, and really wanting to help guide people into that as well. But then also thinking of, but you're not perfect enough, so maybe that's not right. And so some different things that can go along in that. But again, it comes more into this relating and what will make people acceptable.
Is that one? You guys, does that ring true at all?
Anybody a 1 in here?
There's some ones in here.
Yeah.
Ring true?
So oftentimes the 1, they can be leaders, but they often are in that more administrative assistant, and they have a really keen eye, and this is where the more resourced of being able to see things in detail and just hone and sharpen and shape. And it's great to have 1s working with you because they see things and they care about things that you might not have an eye or a keenness for. So then you leave your gut and you go into more of your heart. So gut, heart, head will be the 3 triads. So your 2, 3s, and 4s are often more thinking and reacting more out of their heart. They tend to be more of our feelers. And so your 2s, and again, they will either externalize it, they'll externalize it, somewhat be not so much aware of it, or they'll internalize it. So with your 2s, 2s are often considered what are helpers. And underneath all 3 of these, they can sometimes carry an underlying perception of shame and not being good enough and low self-worth. And again, I want to step into, depending on our upbringing, depending on our life experiences, depending on our own self-awareness and the journey that we've been on, there will be a spectrum of how much people resonate and carry a higher sense of shame versus a lower sense of shame, a higher sense of self-worth and value, and a lower sense of worth and value. So Keith has shared a little bit, well, I'll get to him on the 3. So the 2s tend to be helpers. They are, and again, this is where it's so beautiful. You'll see you're resourced and you're not so resourced. And this is where balance comes in, because they are generous and they see a need and they want to meet that need, and they are gifted in ways to be helpful, to be generous, to be gracious, to just see something and want to go kind of build up and help. And we need people in our world that are generous with their time, that are other-minded, and really considerate. Sometimes the 2s can get out of balance of where they're so other-minded, they're not taking care of themselves. And that's an area of where just being able to balance. If you are called to serve and you are an other-minded person, really, really balancing what you say yes to and setting some boundaries of what you need to say no to. And being really able to look and say, kind of, what are some core motivations of why I do this? Do I need to be needed? And if that's true, own that, and that's something to be leaning into the Lord with, for him to continue to affirm and validate who we are as people made in his image, and that we are fearfully and wonderfully made, so that we can serve out of a place of freedom and not out of a place to prove ourselves or to have a sense of validation for our worth. 3s, again.
I don't think anybody was a 3, right? No 3s?
Achiever, performer. 3, yeah. Okay, yeah. So 3s, again, these are often your CEOs and leaders and will rise to, so we don't always have a lot of them in the room, but they will often be, they're very driven, and are very capable and are accomplishers. And so we absolutely need people with a lot of drive and vision and accomplishment. And you'll see them rise to CEO type level of organizations and that. Underlying that is, and this is where we want to be compassionate, is oftentimes this quest to feel valued and to, again, prove themselves and have that sense of validation and for people to affirm and an external sense of affirmation that I have worth and value. Keith shared his story of just being adopted. And I'm going to take a step back that some of these will be shaped out of, it's a nature-nurture sense. Anybody ever hear like the terms nature and nurture? Yeah. So nature would be kind of our genetic makeup, how we are biologically wired, just who God has made us to be in our temperaments. And then nurture would be life experiences. So all of these are shaped in a combination of the two. That's why they're really going to express themselves really, really uniquely. And this is just a generalization of them. So with Keith, very, very much wired with quick processing and detail and visioning and big picture and macro and leadership and capacity and all of that. Some life experiences from his adoption, from some challenges within his family of origin with substance abuse. All of those have left some little bit of seeds of questioning, I would say. Am I enough? Am I good enough? And some wrestlings with abandonment. And so threes often struggle with this sense of do I have value and needing some external validation to feel good enough about themselves. And so it's just, is any of this resonating? Yeah, it's hard. But this is where I believe that as we allow ourselves to vulnerably peak, the Lord can go into those places and bring some healing and some freedom in those areas. And we absolutely don't want our threes to go away. We want them to be able to live more in freedom and more of a sense of confidence in their value and who they are and how much God loves them and that he'll never leave them nor forsake them. And so they can freely serve without having a sense of waiting for that sense of validation or such discouragement if nobody says anything. And they won't feel flat or deflated if they didn't get that external validation that is sometimes so life-giving. The fours, and the fours on this spectrum, one of our temperaments is emotional intensity. And so we are just biologically wired to kind of have this spectrum of feeling things high, really, really high, or feeling things on the lower side. And so we're all on this spectrum. And so fours tend to be a bit more temperament-wise, feeling things really, really, really deeply. And then sometimes feeling like something's wrong with them because they feel so deeply and so passionately. And they're often very artistic and expressive, but they feel unique, like other people aren't exactly like them. And then they feel different and something's wrong with them. And I just want to celebrate you fours, whoever, if you don't mind, share your fours. Yeah. Fours are beautiful. They bring art and they bring expression and they bring depth and they cause us to stop and pause and go deeper and to reflect. And as I've had clients that are coming with more of a sense of depression and anxiety and they're thinking something's wrong with me, I just feel so deeply and I struggle with depression, we look into their story and oftentimes it's really just their temperament that they are just wired to feel things deeply. And then to embrace that and to be able to work with the Lord and knowing how to balance that and what to do, because sometimes big emotions can feel really overwhelming. So it's a beautiful, you're artistic or you're romantic, you're individualist. And they want to be unique. And we need uniqueness, and we celebrate that uniqueness. So these are your heart, so your gut, your heart, and then your head. So your 5, 6, and 7 are what we would consider living out or kind of more interpreting things or staying in their head more. And again, we need these intellectuals. But sometimes it's really more of a sense of emotions are so uncomfortable, I'm just going to stay in my head. And so it's a bit of suppressing, and we want to help this triad to become a little bit more balanced, to continue to just strive after understanding and going deeper, but not just stay in that knowledge realm, but to be able to become more comfortable in the feeling realm as well. I understand that last week there was a lot of feeling stuff taking place, and that's not always comfortable. Our Western society, I'm going to say, is much more left-brain, intellectual, information-driven, and not so like our indigenous cultures or our Hispanic culture of emotionally expressive. So if you've grown up in more of a Western mindset, this emotional realm has not fully really had opportunity to be developed in many of our upbringings.
Where's the fives?
It's my wing.
It's your wing? Yep, I'll talk about that in just a minute. So you're 5, 6, 7. So your 5 is a thinker, observer, investigator. And so there's some insecurities of who they are and their confidence. And they don't like to feel incompetent. And so that would be a negative feeling. And so there's a lot of, I'm going to learn, so that I have a sense of competency. And so then by the time I say something or do something, I feel really strong, and I don't have to feel that anxiousness about about not knowing enough. But then I have some insecurities that I still don't know enough. And they can be some withholders of they don't really want, they kind of refrain and hold themselves back because there's some fear or discomfort of what others will think about them. So it's through their head and their knowledge and their investigation that they have a natural bent towards curiosity and wonder and love to gather information, but it can also be a protective tool that helps them kind of hide behind how much they gather. The loyalist and the skeptics, this one, fear is really the underlying with that, and oftentimes, again, this is in that emotional intensity temperament that they can feel things deeply. Oftentimes, 6s have had some experiences of threat or danger or fear in their lives, and so they're really, really compensating and developing tools to be prepared, to not be caught off guard, to not feel those high senses of fear or danger or lack of prepared. So if you remember in the little video, she talked about her...
They asked on that topic?
What was that?
They asked that question like 12 times.
Yeah, so a lot of them there. So the contingencies, always prepared. The Lord, so my associate, my assistant director that helped us develop the counseling center, I tend to be a little bit more of a 7 and a little bit more spontaneous and to do things, and I don't always have to be prepared to know everything. She is a 6 and likes to be prepared. And we have partnered really well together. I challenge her and pull her out of that when I put her on the spot, which she hates. And then she challenges me to be a bit more organized for her so she's not so on the spot.
Where are the 6s in the room?
A little bit? Yep. Okay, and then your 7, again, this is coming out of the head, and again, emotions can be really uncomfortable or a type of emotion, and some of them don't like to feel pain. And so this is oftentimes your joyful, your fun-loving, really positive life of the party, but again, it can express itself in different ways, but they can also really, really be prone to substance abuse, if there's a real sense of avoiding some of those painful, uncomfortable emotions. But they can also be light, and they're able to spin things to the positive. They don't stay in the negative. Yes?
I feel like I feel the pains of all of them, but I don't know which ones I have to stuff.
Okay. Yeah. So you're resonating with some, but still not necessarily knowing where you go into.
You could say like fear of failure, and then just now like the substance abuse.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah. So as we kind of get a macro picture of them and then how they can go into one another, which I'm going to try to quickly go through.
Where are the 7s?
We can see that, I thought I was that because I have a lot of that in me, but maybe that's not as strong to be the dominant, but maybe that's a wing, or maybe that's something I go into. So I'm going to describe that. So that's a general overview of the type that we will often rise to. And again, with the WEPs, it'll give you that graph that will show you the percentile to consider kind of at a first glance. Then they have what we call a wing, that if you're a 9, you will probably lean into having some strong characteristics of the 1 or the 8. So what's the word? The
Right wing, left wing?
Yeah, they're left wing, they're flanking. So the numbers that happen to flank. So whichever, like if you're the number, you might lean into a 2 or a 4 or 5 to a 4 or 6. And so knowing the number that's adjacent to you and the two different ones can also be a little bit of honing in on, does the 4 actually describe me well? Do I have a lot of 3 or do I have a lot of 5 in me? And that can be helpful to know which is dominant. Or am I actually more 5 with a little bit of 4? So I resonate with both of them, but one of them actually feels a little bit more characteristic of me. And so, and that's going to actually affect like how the 8 portrays itself. So an 8 with the wing 7 is going to look really, really different than an 8 with a wing 9. Or a 9 with a wing 8 will look different than a 9 with a wing 1. And so again, it's going to express itself. So 2 other pieces that are really helpful. You'll notice these arrows. So the arrow moving away is what we tend to go into when we're under stress. And the arrow going towards the number is the number we tend to lean into when when we feel safe and more relaxed and kind of at ease. And again, even with these, they can be more resourced or not. So, and that's why we look at this and we're like, I don't resonate with just one, because we are adaptive and we will have a reflection of many of them in differing circumstances and differing ways.
Can you say the direction of the arrows again?
Yep. So the 1, so it's kind of you move away and go towards when we're in stress. So it's like so a 9, well, we'll take the 7. So a 7 will go to a 1 when they tend to be a little bit more stressed. But when they are more at ease or comfortable, then they would lean into the 5. And so the resource side and the assets of the 5. And so for our 1s here, under stress, they may go to the 4 and feel more of a sense of individuality and maybe, but the other thing in stress is that you don't always reflect the negative of that number. You can be leaning into the more resourced there. And these are, this is pretty set. So whatever your number is, there's a tendency to lean into the 8 for the 2 under stress, but lean into the 4 when more relaxed. And so that can get a little bit overwhelming with information, but it can also be helpful as you start looking at the details of the different ones and seeing which ones come to the surface. So so that, let me just pause there and then we'll just ask me some questions and I'll try to unravel some of this. Yes?
So I had a good example just to break down the areas a little bit.
Okay.
If Lexi just it might help a little bit. Is like, so I'm an 8 and a 1. I probably lean more into the 8 than I do the 1.
Okay.
But with the 1, when I'm in a time of my life of stress or even just a week or a day of stress, often I'll lean into 4 with worship music and things like that helps ease my mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Questions, thoughts?
The 9.
Yes.
And the 3, and then the, what is that one? 6.
Okay.
Yeah, so why are those arrows red?
Okay, so the red will be showing the ones under stress, and the red are showing the one when relaxed because they're coming towards the number, and the black are going away from the number. So see the 7 and the black is going away from the 7, and then that just actually didn't make sense because there's a number going through there.
Was it to show the triangle?
Oh, okay, yeah. So I think that is a good question. So it's not just the stress and I know. Well, and this is let's see if we have a italics above or the avoidance, with arrow, disintegration, against arrow, but they don't have a color. So I'm also looking to see if they've paired to the heart and okay, that's what it is. Okay, so the red are paired with your heart triad. The black are paired, or the blue is your gut, and then the green is your head. And so let's see how that maps itself out. So with your 3, a 3 goes into the 9, but also the 6 and the heart. I don't know. I'm just going to say, I don't know. I'll have to see if I can look at a little more detail.
I bet it's to show the triangle.
Yeah, just more of just a color tool. Okay, Yeah, I don't know if it's related to that and just seeing that.
What's cool is the test didn't make any sense at first, but when we went into the later things like 8, 9, 5, and 2, that makes more sense.
Yeah, yeah. So like one person, look at how many things you are typically influenced by. So let's say a 9, you can be, that might be your dominant, but then you're going to highly be leaning towards an 8 and have a lot of those adaptive resources, or you're going to be leaning towards a 1 and have a lot of those. You're not all just a 9. Go ahead.
I have another question. Just in regards to, isn't one of the dangers of this test that if you interpret the question differently, it'll give you a potential false result? Although, me saying that does somewhat point to a 1, so.
Yeah.
Anyways.
No, and that's why I think, so the road back to you is written in a way for you to self-type even without an inventory. Yeah. And so for you to read these descriptions and really reflect what part, what do I resonate with, what sounds like me. And we don't have to own a number. We just want to draw. So in fact, some people will have like so many numbers that they have a high percentage of. So that's where it's more reflective. Well, what circumstances do I feel more like a 5? What circumstances do I feel more like a 7? What circumstances, and being able to ponder and reflect what's going on in those situations. Am I feeling more stress? Am I feeling more relaxed? Am I feeling just tired and overwhelmed? Am I feeling insecure? Is my value being questioned? And so a lot of these different, or am I feeling really confident and competent and on my game? And so leaning into when you feel like I'm resonating with that number, what's going on in your life? Because that's probably why you're expressing that particular number. So again, so a 9 can have a wing 1 or 8, but then in stress, they might pull out some of the characteristics of a 6. But that could also be highly planning and organized and efficient, and some contingencies that just help them be much more detailed oriented. But when relaxed, they can relax a bit with that and just be incredibly competent and driven and visioning and to get these different things done. So a few more minutes. Questions? What are you seeing? Like, pick out your number. Let's see if I can just unpack it with you. Lexi.
I know the words.
Oh, sorry.
Kate.
Go ahead, Kate.
Sorry, I just had a brain, like my entire brain just died. Oh, thank you. First of all, am I literally the only 4? Is there any other 4s? Okay,
I
good.
don't know which ones are paying attention to. We have a lot of
Several
ones that
people
are
raise their hand.
very
Yeah. So let me answer Kate's question, and then I'll come back to you.
Okay, I was just wondering though, like, I got the direction the arrows confused. I know, like, one of them says, like, you take the negative traits on from this one, and one of them takes positive traits. I just can't remember which is which.
Yeah. And so what I really liked with so some of them will describe that in stress you go to the negative, and in rest or relaxation or when you're comfortable and at peace you go to the positive. That's why I like the WEPs, because so I can score a 7, but I also can, when I'm stressed or I just have a lot and kind of more times, then I can go to a 1. But the positive sides of 1 where I can be really focused and efficient and detailed and just get things done. So very compartmentalized, but lean into the assets. Like stress can drive me to this place of focus and detail and accomplishment. So it can really be positive. You can lean into, even under stress, can lean into the more resource side of that.
But I was just,
Yes.
so like, which is which?
Okay, so the going to, you go away from your number in stress, and the other number comes towards you and more relaxed.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
okay,
yeah.
thank you.
What was the other URL that you were going to give us that is like a deeper knowledge of this?
Yeah, so WEPSS, weps.com.
It's multiple page report.
It's the Wagner Enneagram Personality Style Scale, I think. And it's only $12. Not very long. Yeah, I would say not much more than 20 minutes. And what I like is, read the descriptions and you know yourself best, and invite the Holy Spirit to reflect what part sounds like me, what doesn't. So even reading the road back to you, some of those descriptions of how they describe the numbers, I'm like, well, that doesn't sound like me. And then I'll read another description. I'm like, well, that sounds more than me, which can get a bit confusing. And so then you can get stuck on, well, what am I? And so then you're like, it doesn't really matter. I mean, it can be helpful, but don't put yourself in a box of like, I need to be a 1, or I need to know I'm a 3, or I need to be this. Allow yourself to reflect on what are some descriptions of that, and then when might I be that type. Yes?
So I think it's important to remember that, yes, we might lean towards something more than something else, but that God created all of us like to be individual, and that we all have like a very different mixture of everything inside of us, and that's changing by the things that happen in our lives and whatever. So like I have to keep that in my head.
Yeah. Yeah, it can be overwhelming. And we are the body of Christ. And that's the beauty of this, is the uniqueness of all of us, and then the expression of these in all of us, and how we collaboratively work together and bring these assets and these resources there. So using this very loosely for more self-reflection and curiosity and wonder, to be able to give you the courage to go a little bit deeper. But not with fear and what does it say about me, and shame, and really fight off any sense of shame that then gives a sense of something's wrong with me. Bringing these to the surface and allowing the Holy Spirit to let you consider, is this an area that the Lord needs to bring some healing in, or to develop more courage or more validation, and some of these more harder sides that we're often trying to avoid or manage. Because it does take a lot of energy to manage insecurities, and that energy can be better resourced living in freedom there. So use this as a tool. Yes. Oh.
I want to wrap up. So what? So what? So what? So what? Yeah.
Helps us better understand other people and maybe work together better with them.
How's that? What does that have to do with discipleship? So what? What is it? So what does that have to do with anything we've talked about all week? Discipleship.
It help us understand people better.
If you want to minister to them, disciple them, help them, right?
Help you have a better connection with them.
Okay. Excellent, Maddie. What else? So what?
It helps you understand what's going on through their head and their emotions.
So everybody you meet, you're like, give me your number before we can talk, so I can make sure I know how to best, meet your. We don't do that, right? But it's funny, today in my world, I'll go up to someone and say, hey, what are you? They know exactly what I'm talking about. It's an Enneagram style.
Oh, people ask me what I am just because of what I look like.
Yeah, right.
Because of that.
Yeah, of course, you'd say, well, I'm What else? What discipleship? How does this affect discipleship? Knowing what you've learned today about yourself.
It makes you aware that people are different than you.
Not everybody's in the same cake.
I mean, it kind of changes how I view my own reactions to things, so I can better understand why I'm feeling a certain way. It's not it's not always because of external. It's sometimes just because that's just the way my brain works. It doesn't know.
Good. Good.
That.
I want to hear a few more. What does this have to do with discipleship?
Shows you what to work on in your own life.
Yeah.
You gotta equip yourself.
Yeah. And these aren't all self-help, like figure yourself out to fix things either. These are ways for you, I think, to impress upon your heart of who God has made you, nurture nature, so that you can be a better disciple yourself and better disciple others. Go ahead.
I was gonna say it helps with in a teaching position, like understanding your audience, like how are they going to hear the message, so that you keep everyone engaged.
Yeah, terrific. Wait a minute.
I think it helps me be more gracious to people, if someone doesn't understand exactly what I'm trying to say, me about okay, well, they might receive it the same way, or they don't think about it the same way that I think about it, and trying to figure out, okay, what are the different options that I can use to instead of always using the same way of speaking to them.
Yeah. It changes up your tactics because it's
It changes your tactics.
Yeah, it changes even hearing my roommates, I was like, oh, it's because that. It explains how much this happens.
That explains it, right? Some of the stuff it does.
That explains a lot.
So I'm a 3, Debbie said. She's like a 7 some of the time. She bounces around a lot. I think she's schizophrenic. But,
So all of you that are like, ah, man, what am I? See, we can resonate with that. I learn about the different ones, and I just continue to consider, okay, if I were a 1, what are some of those and what part of that resonates with me? If I'm a 7, what of that resonates with me, and what are some areas that the Lord can grow me in? And so I'm just really keeping this openness of consideration to be open to what the Lord can teach you.
So if she's a 7, let's say most of the time, I'm a 3 most of the time, our household looks much different than somebody who has like a 5 and a 4. A person like me who's efficient, I keep the house clean. Debbie is the party. If there's something going on that she can go get involved in that doesn't have to do with work always, she wants to go do that. She wants to be involved with people. She wants to sit with people, engage in their lives. I can't wait to take things off my list, check them off before I go to bed. I clean my email every night before I go to sleep. I'm an idiot, okay? I keep things running while she's having fun, which is frustrating because, you know, Mary Martha?
Yeah.
Okay, I'm one of those too, and I'm not a girl. But I'm Mary or I'm Martha, right? I'm the Martha in the family. And so it has helped us to understand as disciples, as fully committed followers of Jesus, who we are, so that I know that I have to give her space to do the party thing. And she occasionally has to clean up her side of the bed because it drives me nuts. All right? And so we figured those things out. And it helps us in our relationship, but also to be better pastors and ministers. Okay? So we hope that this has helped you as well as spiritual gifts this afternoon. Helps you to know, okay, based on what I figured out, I know that I can be a better disciple myself, and I know how to disciple others. Let's all stand. We sang it yesterday. Let's sing it to close. Praise God from